Part 6. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 51. Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto's house at the time agreed on the phone, ready to pick up the new manga manuscript. As a rule, as a cartoonist who has signed a serialization contract, after completing a work, he will take advantage of the strong popularity to start a new serialization. But after Yoshida entered the room, he saw a speechless scene. Takahashi Makoto was standing on the table, with a weird and broken smile on his face, and he was reading something excitedly. Sealed confused soul, now is the moment I need you, wake up. After glancing at Yoshida, Takahashi Makoto did not say hello, but continued to chant some unknown spell, born in the darkness, after the baptism of darkness, the existence that once ruled the entire hell, break free from the shackles of hope and light, and respond to me with darkness and despair, called. What are you doing? Yoshida interrupted Takahashi Makoto's summoning ceremony at an inappropriate time. Makoto Takahashi had an angry expression on his face, his eyes were staring at Yoshida, his mouth opened and closed, as if he was saying something, but Yoshida didn't hear anything. Just when Yoshida couldn't help but want to go up and continue questioning, Takahashi Makoto suddenly laughed wildly on the table. Although he was used to this kind of scene, seeing Makoto Takahashi laughing wildly on the table like a convulsion, Yoshida still had an ominous premonition. Yoshida's sixth sense, which is beyond ordinary people, told him that Makoto Takahashi in front of him seemed to have entered a state that could make people's hearts chill. My beloved cat, cheer. Be excited. The original personality from the soul of the Demon King has finally awakened under the sacrifice contributed by the Demon King Ogata. The new personality has been reconstructed, Makoto Takahashi. Although he stopped laughing wildly, there was still that weird smile on his face. The dark age we have been waiting for so long has finally arrived. Can something like personality really be rebuilt? Yoshida rolled his eyes and ignored Takahashi Makoto at all. Instead, he poured himself tea in a familiar manner, held the teacup, and sat on the sofa with his legs crossed. Started drinking tea with great enjoyment and comprehending life. My familiar cat, let me show you the new work. Makoto Takahashi took out a stack of manga manuscripts from the drawer and handed it to Yoshida, with an expectant expression on his face. As I told you before, like that, I have gained new insights in the past few days, so I came up with this healing work. Is it my imagination? Yoshida put down the teacup, took the comic, and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a puzzled look on his face. Why did I just read it as if I was emphatic when I heard you talking about the healing system? Very heavy. You heard me right. A glimmer of light flashed in Makoto Takahashi's eyes, and his face still maintained the look of expectation. After reading the first episode and the supplementary related content, you will believe my words. Are these? Yoshida flipped through it roughly and found that the following pages were basically text, without a single comic. He was a little confused. These following, it seems that they are not even storyboards, right? They are just text. That's all. Well, those things are just follow-up additions to this work. The smile on Makoto Takahashi's face made Yoshida feel uneasy no matter how he looked at it. When he saw Yoshida starting to read the manga with doubts, the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face became even stronger. The cartoon sketch at the top is a very ordinary family portrait. Yoshida looked at this family photo, but he became a little confused, because in this family photo, there was a little boy's smile. Although it looked bright, if you look closely, it is a bit creepy. If you look closely at the little boy's smile, you will understand that that smile does not come from the heart, but is disguised. That feeling of violation not only makes people feel a little curious, but more importantly, it is a kind of shuddering fear. Takahashi Makoto, your painting skills seem to have improved a lot recently. Yoshida looked at the family portrait with an expression of surprise on his face and praised him without hesitation, but the little boy in the painting. It's the male protagonist of this work, Obahazo, the corners of Makoto Takahashi's mouth became wider, but he showed an apologetic look on his face. Haha, you look at it first, by the way let's read the rest of the text together. But I feel it's a pity that due to time constraints, this work only has the content of the first chapter completed. The real healing lies in the back. Listening to what Takahashi Makoto said, Yoshida became even more confused. Is it a healing manga? Looking at the family portrait in the first chapter, Yoshida felt a little inconsistent. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't feel the healing feeling. Maybe I am too impatient? Yoshida warned himself secretly and began to read the comics seriously. On the other side, Makoto Takahashi stood up gently, took out the camera that had been exposed from a stalker uncle before, placed it in a secret place where he could record without blind spots, and turned on the shooting mode. Get ready to record everything that happens next. This work. After Yoshida read the first chapter of the comic and the subsequent text narration, he asked Makoto Takahashi calmly, "Is it the healing system you call it?" "Of course, my beloved cat." Makoto Takahashi looked completely happy, looking at Yoshida with joy. "How about it, do you feel that your whole life has been completely overturned? That is what it should be. Yes, this is real healing. Cure, cure." Yoshida almost said these two words through gritted teeth. His face suddenly became very gloomy. He slammed the comic manuscript on the table, grabbed Takahashi Makoto's collar, and roared loudly, "What kind of healing is this? Makoto Takahashi, do you know what healing is? In your work, from front to back, let alone healing, from the comics to the supplementary text at the end, it is completely filled with despair and darkness. Do you intend that everyone who has read this will embark on a path of self-destruction? So, has your existence called life been cured?" Looking at the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face, Yoshida felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. "My beloved cat, do you feel that life is gone, it's meaningless? Are you tired of living? Do you want to commit suicide to find relief? Is this your original intention of creating this comic?" Yoshida suddenly let go of Makoto Takahashi feebly, as if he had lost all his strength, and lay softly on the sofa. "It is impossible for this kind of comic to be serialized." "Ah. I remember someone once said this to me." Makoto Takahashi took out a pair of black-rimmed glasses from somewhere and put them on, crossed his hands to support his chin, and began to imitate the commander of the editorial department. "As long as comics are interesting, as long as it's interesting, you can serialize it. It's funny, you sister." Yoshida angrily picked up the comic on the table, banged it with his fingers, and roared loudly, "This kind of work that carries darkness and despair, this kind of negative energy through to the end, where did you come from? Are you interested? I really want to open your head and see what you think." "Of course it's interesting." Makoto Takahashi's eyes were full of joy, and his face showed an expression of enjoyment, especially during the serialization. "Under the banner of healing, those cowards who seek healing will be completely trapped. The supreme sense of joy that arises from this in the midst of darkness and despair, ah, I feel drunk just thinking about it. Serialization? It is absolutely impossible for this kind of work to be serialized." Yoshida looked bitter and resentful at first, but seeing Takahashi Makoto still unmoved, Yoshida began to vomit his bitterness to Takahashi Makoto. "Takahashi Makoto, Mr. Phoenix Academy, how much hatred do you have against our Shounen Jump? After this kind of work is serialized, the editorial department will definitely be besieged by parents. If you do this, it will not only ruin it. The editorial department will drag the entire Boyan Jump into the abyss of death." "Oh? I think it's more than just that." Makoto Takahashi shook his head and sighed. "Before, I told the great Demon King Ogata that I would become the Demon King who dominates the comics world, and then I will marry Rina. The princess lives a happy life, but now that I think about it, this is basically impossible. One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball, etc. If you want to surpass these classic masterpieces, make dominating the comics industry is an impossible task. So, I was thinking, let's just completely destroy the entire comics industry. The way many demon kings unify the world is by destroying the world and creating a new one. Completed. How did you come up with such an extreme idea? Listening to the reason given by Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida almost cried. Oh, my familiar cat, it seems like you don't believe what I say, Makoto Takahashi sneered. You've also read this comic, The Endless Darkness and Despair, haha, publish this kind of work that can easily lead people astray. When parents are angry, they will definitely kill your editorial department to pieces. But Takahashi Makoto, have you forgotten that this work may not be serialized? Yoshida suddenly laughed. It's really a pity that your wish cannot be realized. So redraw it for me now? The previous one was pretty good, I remember you drew some before, that was the narration. Tisk tisk tisk, my beloved cat, you are too naive, Makoto Takahashi smiled and shook his finger, taking out the contract from his arms. Did you forget what was written in the contract? Chapter 1 Article 32, after completing a series of cartoons, cartoonists are eligible to participate in new series. Are you planning to break the contract? That's just an opportunity for serialization. Yoshida also had a weird smile on his face, took it into his arms, and looked at Makoto Takahashi proudly. And this manuscript, can it reach the editorial office safely? Is this possible? This is a very serious question. Maybe the author forgot to submit it to the editor, or the manuscript was accidentally lost or something. Oh, do you want to dump my drawings on the road? It's exactly what I expected. Makoto Takahashi shook his head with emotion. The camera master over there is a very faithful recorder. After all this, my beloved cat, you are more than 100 years too early to resist this demon king. Yoshida and Takahashi Makoto looked at each other. The smile on Takahashi Makoto's face made Yoshida feel very uncomfortable, but it was very familiar. Okay, I will submit your work to the serialization meeting. Are you satisfied now? After Yoshida hesitated for a long time, he finally compromised. But Yoshida's face was still very ugly. This kind of work that is not royal at all will definitely not pass the serialization meeting. That's right, this work of mine is not even an evil comic, let alone a mainstream comic. This is the way of darkness and despair that belongs exclusively to the Demon King. Takahashi Makoto took out a pile of drawings from the drawer of his desk and handed them to Yoshida. Speaking of mainstream comics, this work should be considered one, right? Is your drawer connected to another dimension? Yoshida complained feebly, and took the comic draft. His eyes lit up. This is... Yes, it's the work you saw before, Takahashi Makoto said in a low voice. This is one of my favorite works in my previous life. Yoshida took the comic draft and quickly left Takahashi Makoto's house. Yoshida always felt that Takahashi Makoto was acting a little weird today, but he couldn't tell where this weirdness was. Oh, if only this kid could be like Hiramaru-kun, Yoshida sighed to himself as he walked. Hiramaru-kun is sometimes like a child, and he can be coaxed by giving him some food. Yoshida suddenly stopped. Because he accidentally saw the smile on his face reflected on the shop window, which was so similar to Takahashi Makoto's smile before. Dark Ages. Yoshida recalled what he saw and heard when he first arrived at Takahashi Makoto's house, and suddenly realized, so that little devil refers to a middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 52. The serialization meeting is a high-level meeting of Shonen Jump magazine to decide whether to serialize comics. Every serialization meeting will determine the fate of some comics and cartoonists. For new cartoonists, whether they can pass the serialization meeting and start a new serialization is the most critical step, but for cartoonists who have signed a contract for serialization, the serialization meeting is even more touching, because anyone who is nominated at the serialization meeting comic works all mean that they have reached the point of death. After the serialization meeting, they are likely to be cut in half. Then, this serialization meeting will be up to me. Yoshida had no intention of listening at all. Instead, he clutched the 3 works in his hands tightly, with a very unnatural look on his face. For editors, discovering an excellent cartoonist is a joyful thing. But Yoshida is not happy at all, but Hiramaru-kun is better off. As long as he is given the appropriate bait, he can continue to draw comics. But, Makoto Takahashi, that guy from the 2nd grade, Yoshida started to have a headache when he thought of Makoto Takahashi. Before, Makoto Takahashi was just a middle school brat. Although he always did some unexpected things sometimes, at least it was still within the acceptable range. But it's completely different now. Yoshida looked at the drawing at the bottom and felt extremely irritable. What on earth is going on with such a dark work? How deeply does that kid hate the world to draw such a work that may harm society? The results of the previous activities have been submitted. The editor-in-chief crossed his hands and held his chin, saying slowly, originally, according to the previous regulations, the top 3 winners would have the opportunity to enter the serialization meeting to discuss whether they can win qualification for serialization. But, one of the works has some problems. Let the cartoonist's editor, Yoshida, explain the specific situation. Ahem, Yoshida came to his senses, coughed, and stood up. As the editor-in-chief, I'm very sorry that this happened. I also communicated with the teacher of the Phoenix Academy, Mr. Makoto Takahashi, afterward. He himself has no intention of continuing to draw, so the editor will exclude this work from the serialization meeting as agreed before. Hearing what Yoshida said, Aida, who is in charge of Hideout Door, beamed with joy. Because according to the voting of previous works, the comic he was responsible for, Hideout Door, ranked 4th in the number of votes. Since the 3rd place was excluded, that means that the work that was originally ranked 4th, maybe there will be a chance to serialize this time. But Yoshida looked at Aida, who was looking happy, and raised the corner of his mouth slightly. Takahashi Makoto has given me 2 more comics, and I have a newcomer here, a total of 3 works. I have them all, I have read it, but there are some problems. 2 people, 3 comics. The editor-in-chief and other people at the meeting were a little surprised, and Aida turned pale instantly. Aida knows very well that if there is a collision between a new cartoonist and a serializing cartoonist at a serialization meeting, generally speaking, the new cartoonist will suffer the most. Just now Aida was hoping that Hideout Door would pass the serialization meeting and enter serialization, but after hearing Yoshida's words again, he was immediately speechless. Comics, as long as they are interesting, the editor-in-chief still had a cold face and looked at Yoshida with some confusion. Do you have anything else to add? Well, I still have something to say. Yoshida took out the work at the bottom and distributed it to everyone present. His face was extremely serious. I don't want this work to pass the serialization meeting and enter serialization. Don't look at me with that strange look, I'm very serious. Oh, forget it, there's no use explaining this, you should see it for yourself first. Hearing what Yoshida said, everyone was a little curious. As an editor, it's really strange that I don't want to be responsible for serializing cartoonists' works. The strange thought of not being enough disappeared after many editors read the new works. This is simply nonsense. The deputy editor looked very ugly. This kind of work must not be published. This kind of work completely goes against, no, it should be completely opposite to the 3 major themes of Shonen Jump, and should not be submitted to come to the serial meeting. Yoshida, after the editor was silent for a moment, his face looked a little ugly, and a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Generally speaking, comics can reflect the author's current thoughts, but Makoto Takahashi actually drew such a comic, such a work, although it cannot be directly proved that there is something wrong with Takahashi Makoto's mentality, but I think you should take Takahashi Makoto to see a doctor. I am starting to worry that something bad will happen in the future. Do you want to see a doctor? I understand, Editor-in-Chief. Yoshida took out another manga by Makoto Takahashi. This is another manga drawn by Makoto Takahashi. This manga is more in line with Shounen Jump style, but I'm a little worried that Shuyunibu. Let everyone read it first before talking. The editor-in-chief regained his composure, looked at Yoshida, who was a little embarrassed and uneasy, and said, Yoshida, although sometimes there is nothing wrong with doing things according to the contract, but don't forget that as the responsibility of editors. We are not only responsible to readers, but also to cartoonists. Full Metal Alchemist. The existence of a pseudoscience like alchemy sounds a bit boring. Aida looked at the name of the comic and secretly slandered in his heart. Yoshida actually thinks that this kind of comic is more in line with the magazine in terms of style. How do alchemists fight with each other? Are they throwing various test tubes filled with chemicals at the enemy? But Full Metal Alchemist is not as boring as Aida imagined. Full Metal Alchemist tells the story of Edward and his brother Al, who missed their mother who died when they were young too much. In order to see her deceased mother again, they violated the biggest taboo of alchemy, letting the dead made from the resurrected human body. As a result, alchemy backfired, and Edward lost his left leg and his brother Al lost his body. In order to save his brother, Ed sacrificed his right arm as a price and fixed his brother's soul in a pair of armor, while Edward's lost right arm and left leg were replaced by a steel prosthetic mechanical armor. In order to get back their original bodies, the two brothers embarked on a journey to find the Philosopher's Stone. The manga manuscript submitted by Makoto Takahashi only contains 3 chapters, which cannot fully express the entire story. However, only the content of the first 3 chapters has attracted the attention of everyone in the editorial department. There was no discussion in the entire serialization meeting. The sound has completely turned into a comic reading conference. It's only 3 chapters, but it involves science, religion, and other aspects of knowledge. The way of fighting between alchemists is more exaggerated than I imagined. Using all available objects, decomposing and refining, this kind of the fighting style is wonderful, really wonderful. The deputy editor seemed to be able to boast, and suddenly felt a little quiet around him. When he looked up, he found that everyone was looking at him, and he couldn't help but coughed in embarrassment and turned to Yoshida. Asked, Ahem, Yoshida, there is nothing wrong with serializing a comic like this. Why were you worried if you didn't take it out before? It's just because this manga has no problems and can be serialized, that's why I'm worried. Yoshida felt the puzzled looks in everyone's eyes, and began to complain to the people in the editorial department. You don't understand the Chuyunibu at all. He does things but I never act according to common sense. Just like before, when I showed you the first manga, Takahashi Makoto promised me that it was a very warm and healing manga, and everyone read the manga. How did you feel afterward? Was it healing? Humph. After watching it, I completely understood the despair and darkness. Takahashi Makoto? Is it really what you said? Several editors on the side were a little confused. When I came to the editorial department before, I felt that he was just a very passionate and courageous high school student. Haha. Yoshida was unable to complain, as if he had been spoiled, he could only smile awkwardly. Ahem, the editor-in-chief coughed when he saw that everyone seemed to be off topic. So regarding Full Metal Alchemist, everyone's opinion is, can it be included in the serialization candidate? But editor-in-chief, if you include Full Metal Alchemist. The deputy editor-in-chief was a little anxious. According to the previous practice, there can only be 3 new comic series starting every month. If the top 3 in the event. As soon as the deputy editor said these words, the scene suddenly became a little depressing. There is already a comic on the waiting list, which means that the competition will be fierce, and many comics will fail. But every comic that can enter the serialization conference is excellent, and it would be a pity to give up casually. Thinking of this, the editors' eyes began to show hostility towards each other. "We'll discuss this issue later," the editor-in-chief said with finality. "It's a fact that comics can be serialized if they are interesting. So for now, regardless of the quantity limit, tell us the comics you want to be serialized and the reasons for your recommendation. Thank you to the authors for their hard work as editors. We should take the drawn works very seriously." "Then let me start." Aida stood up first and took out the comic he was going to recommend for serialization. "The comic I recommend is a two-person combination, Hideout Door, co-written by Aoki Kurane and Nakai. The entire serial meeting finally began to enter normal mode. Some comics that are being serialized have fallen a lot in the reader survey rankings and their popularity has dropped rapidly. They were announced to be cut in half at the conference. During the entire meeting, a total of 3 works were announced to have been cut in half. There are 5 comics in total that have the chance to become new serials, and they have all been included in the waiting list. In the following time, everyone in the editorial department began to argue fiercely over which 3 works could become the new serialized comics. Colleagues who usually seemed harmonious started to fight fiercely during this meeting. For the 5 comics on the waiting list, the 5 responsible editors fought hard and refused to give in at all. So, after discussion, it was decided that the comics that can be serialized are. The editor looked at the comic manuscripts on the table and pushed up his glasses, and these are the 3. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 53. Takahashi Chengzhen is drawing comics alone. Because of the start of school, except for Miss Shangguan, the 2 assistants have returned to school. As for Miss Shangguan, it seems that due to some reasons, she temporarily said goodbye to her life as an assistant, and it seems that she is going home. Makoto Takahashi is drawing the content of the 4th episode. Unlike before, Makoto Takahashi no longer has a smile on his face, but looks a little gloomy. Because the content of the chapter I am drawing is about the Edward brothers searching for the Philosopher's Stone and finding. Takahashi: Makoto, are you at home? Open the door quickly, I'm Yoshida. There was a loud knock on the door. Takahashi Makoto frowned, reluctantly put down the brush in his hand, stood up and opened the door. My beloved cat, I seem to have told you many times. Before I come here, I have to. Makoto Takahashi complained with an unhappy look on his face, but when he saw the person in front of Yoshida, he stopped immediately. Excuse me, Makoto Takahashi. The bespectacled editor-in-chief nodded slightly and entered the room with Yoshida. Oh, this is really. Makoto Takahashi looked at the editor-in-chief sitting on the sofa, and looked at Yoshida with some confusion. Is it the way I opened the door that was wrong? Why did the commander come to me? My beloved cats, judging from your expressions, it seems that you came here because of that work? It seems that you already know the purpose of our visit. Yoshida scratched his head in embarrassment and smiled sarcastically. Takahashi Makoto, the editor-in-chief means that we hope you can cooperate with us and go. Huh? Is it because the comic submitted before was too dark? So you started to worry about my personal physical and mental health. Do you want to take me to see a doctor? Looking at the silent expressions of the 2 people, a strange smile appeared on Xiao Cheng's face. Looking at your expressions, it proves that I guessed it right. But I'm sorry, I reject what you said. Since you already know, why do you still refuse? The editor-in-chief looked at Makoto Takahashi with a cold face and began to persuade. As an editor, I hope that cartoonists can draw good works. But I also don't want cartoonists to draw good works. Because I am addicted to my works and create too much unnecessary pressure. So, Isn't that work interesting? Makoto Takahashi was very rude and interrupted the editor-in-chief. He looked at the two people in front of him with a confused answer. As for my thoughts after watching it, I saw you guys coming here. I knew it without asking. But, do you know why I drew that comic? A comic can reflect an author's thoughts at a certain period. The editor-in-chief's eyes showed a light of thought. After a moment of silence, he said lightly, but I really can't think of the reason why you drew that comic. Manga is an amazing existence. Makoto Takahashi raised his head and sighed. Because of the touching plot, readers will cry for it. Because of the wonderful battles, readers will be excited. Because of the inspirational story, readers will be moved by it. I will be passionate about it. Readers can feel a lot and learn a lot from the comics. The editor should agree with me, right? It seems that you have your own unique views on comics, the editor sighed, and pointed out with a sharp eye, in this case, some too dark views will also affect many readers. And the one you submitted before works exist like this. That comic, to be honest, I haven't considered serialization at all. A wicked smile appeared on Takahashi Makoto's face. I just want you to feel the depressive darkness. I give it to you appropriate despair, let you not be too arrogant, this is the so-called truth. Arrogant? When did we become arrogant? Yoshida felt a little unfair, but the editor-in-chief was silent. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi's look and complained helplessly, here we go again, have we fallen into a world of delusion again? Chuyunibu. You let that purple-haired bastard participate in the event, hoping to expand the influence of the event, however, you ignored the feelings of many cartoonists and trampled on our dignity in participating in the feast. Such a self-righteous sin, isn't it arrogant? If you do something wrong, shouldn't you be punished? Makoto Takahashi said with a righteous expression, so, since you can't be blamed, then let's do it. I, the Demon King, have transformed into a messenger of justice, igniting the darkness in your hearts and letting you live a life of depression and depression. This kid. Yoshida could swear that if the editor-in-chief hadn't been sitting next to him, he would have definitely gone up and given Makoto Takahashi a knife. Oh, my familiar cat, you look a little unconvinced. The smile in Takahashi Makoto's eyes made Yoshida feel chilled. To tell you the truth, that comic, it can't be serialized at all. The reason why I submitted it to the serialization meeting is not only to punish you for your arrogance, but also to test you. Testing us, a hint of understanding flashed in the editor-in-chief's eyes, could it be? If you in the editorial department, in order to create a topic and attract more people's attention, lose your normal judgment and add that dark comic to a new series. The expression on Takahashi Makoto's face changed. He felt a little cold, then there is no need for this kind of magazine to exist. This kind of approach that only cares about interests, this kind of completely ignoring the attitude of readers, this kind of completely irresponsible mentality, then no matter how good it is in the future, it will be published. Comics will eventually become nothing more than scraps and are not worthy of being the stage on which our kings will fight in the future. Are you still struggling with that matter? Yoshida looked at the gloomy-faced Makoto Takahashi, a little dumbfounded. Does this kid also hold a grudge? Moreover, that dark comic is full of details, but it only has 10 chapters. Makoto Takahashi seemed to think that was not enough, and continued to stimulate the editor and Yoshida. The comic that was just started to be published was completed in less than a month. This kind of thing happened on Young Jump, it must be fun, right? If you have unnecessary emotions because of Makai no Eiji's incident, I apologize to you. After thinking about it, the editor-in-chief sincerely apologized to Takahashi Makoto, but still launched a fierce counterattack. But, turning the existence of comics into a tool for you to use casually, a prop to vent your dissatisfaction, isn't this the same as Makai Eiji? Ha 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 ha. A being who carries darkness and negativity, gathers darkness and gains strength, isn't this what the Demon King should do? Makoto Takahashi laughed wildly. Don't underestimate people. Makoto Takahashi, am the Demon King. Sir. Looking at Makoto Takahashi's appearance, the editor-in-chief and Yoshida were both speechless. What were their initial thoughts? Persuade Makoto Takahashi to see a doctor? After Yoshida and the editor-in-chief made eye contact, they nodded at the same time. Now they finally understood that there is no cure for the little devil Makoto Takahashi. And afterwards, I was ridiculed by the great demon King Ogata. Because I was worried about Princess Rina's feelings, I couldn't use various slaps in the face of the great demon Ogata. The look on Takahashi Makoto's face began to look a little broken. Bad, he kept mumbling, the great demon King Ogata is just a scum with slightly stronger fighting power than a slime. After taking Princess Rina away, he must be beaten, tortured, and implanted with marking insects. Sold to a nightclub to become a free cowherd, responsible for those elderly mothers-in-law. After they have had enough fun, they will cut him into pieces and preserve them as a sacrifice for the devil's awakening. He. Is this your true idea when you painted that work? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi's face, which was beginning to show signs of darkening, and secretly speculated. Yoshida even began to wonder what Ogata Ag had done to Takahashi Makoto, which made him become like this. What, you are still there? Makoto Takahashi, who came back from his delusion, looked at the two people in front of him and waved his hands with some dissatisfaction. Go back. Remember to be a good person in the future, otherwise I will write your names in death's notebook. Takahashi Makoto, don't you care about your manga? Yoshida tried to change the topic. You know, at the end of the serialization meeting, it was decided that only 3 works can be serialized. Aren't you worried about your work? Do you need to worry about this? Makoto Takahashi shook his head speechlessly. I know very well which 3 comics are serialized. Phoenix Academy Fierce, which is the Full Metal Alchemist I drew, the One Sea Otter number 11 painted by Little Sea Otter, and the Detective Trap by the duo Aiken Mumenjai. Why do you know? I remember I haven't told you yet, right? Yoshida was a little surprised. The decision was made only last night, but Makoto Takahashi knew the result early this morning. You wouldn't understand the ability to predict the future. Makoto Takahashi curled his lips. Speaking of which, it's because of the 2 cartoonists next door. The successful serialization made those 2 guys shout with excitement all night long. I really want to hang them and flog them. Commander-sama, what do you think? Makoto Takahashi put aside these thoughts in his mind and looked at the editor-in-chief. The current commander-in-chief should never make suggestions such as asking me to see a doctor. Right. Well, it's us who have learned a lesson. The editor-in-chief nodded and stood up to leave. However, he saw the comics on the table and hesitated for a moment before persuading him. Takahashi Makoto, I am working as an editor. It's not much, so I'll give you a suggestion. Even the Demon King will not be arrogant. Although Takahashi Makoto sounded modest in tone, there was an impatient look on his face. I have the confidence that the comics I draw can be serialized. But for the sake of your sincerity, I will accept the suggestion reluctantly. I've said it before, comics can represent some of the author's emotions and mentality. The editor-in-chief walked to the door. So, Makoto Takahashi, I still hope to see more inspiring works. Oh. Although he always maintains a serious look, he is unexpectedly a good person. Makoto Takahashi turned to look at Yoshida. My familiar cat, look at it, this is the real editor-in-chief. If you want to become an editor-in-chief, you are still far away. But now I'm still your editor-in-charge. After Yoshida complained, he looked at Makoto Takahashi seriously. Full Metal Alchemist is very good, and everyone has praised the content of the first 3 episodes, so Gao Chiao-chang, please continue to persevere. This kind of royal comics is the mainstream of Shonen Jump. Of course, Makoto Takahashi said with a serious face, although I have become the Demon King now, the idea of saving the world still exists. However, I don't know if this world is still worth saving. Yoshida decisively turned around and left, talking about life and other things with such a middle-aged brat. Sure enough, he was thinking too much and being too naive. You are too naive, my cat. Makoto Takahashi stood by the window, looking at the editor-in-chief and Yoshida's backs, with a strange smile on his face. I really want to become the Demon King. My joy comes from your pain. Hate it, be disgusted, and then try to please the Demon King better. A gust of wind blew, and the drawings on the table were blown up by the wind. The first chapter of the drawings was blown up, revealing a chapter of white paper underneath, on which was written The Troubles of the Alchemist. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 54. Takahashi Makoto, the content of the third episode is as excellent as ever, and you still ranked first in the reader survey. Yoshida started cheering on the phone. I read it right, you are really a genius. Huh? First of all, of course, Makoto Takahashi complained unhappily on the phone. Also, don't fool me with you are a genius or you are very talented, my beloved cat. Do you think I'm that stupid little sea otter? Stand up and keep moving forward on your own legs. Edward's words not only encouraged the confused and desperate Rose, but also made many readers enthusiastic about it. Many readers called to say that they saw I'm encouraged by the content of the third chapter. Yoshida completely ignored Makoto Takahashi and said excitedly, you have to know that because of the previous dark manga, many editors have maintained a certain attitude towards your work, but this time, the editor and I finally relaxed. Good job, Makoto Takahashi. Haha, really? Makoto Takahashi looked at the comic manuscript on the table with an expectant smile on his face. Then when will you come over to get the content of the fourth chapter? I have already drawn it. Searched can on Google. Huh? So soon? Yoshida was a little confused, but he didn't think much about it. Then I'll go there tonight. Oh, here American, if I can be as active as you, I will feel a lot more relaxed. By the way. See you tonight then. Makoto Takahashi heard Yoshida starting to complain and hung up the phone without hesitation. Takahashi Makoto sorted out the drawings on the table and prepared to go out to buy some ingredients. After all, I have been drawing comics day and night during this period, and the inventory at home is running low. Especially the two people next door, no, to be precise, it should be 3 people, who come over to have a meal from time to time. The inventory that could last for a week was emptied in just 3 days, which made Takahashi Makoto a little angry. Not far from Takahashi Makoto's downstairs, there is a small supermarket. The owner is an uncle in his 30s. Makoto Takahashi usually buys food from this supermarket, so he is quite familiar with the boss. Hey, long time no see, Chang. There weren't many people in the supermarket today. The boss took out a copy of Shonen Jump and was about to kill some time when he saw Makoto Takahashi. How are you doing there in the demon world? Is the matter here over? By the way, have you defeated the great devil who rules the dark world? It's a pity that the injury was serious last time, so the Demon King escaped. Makoto Takahashi looked unhappy. Now we need a lot of medicine to restore health and magic points. The inventory at home has been used up, so I came to you. Here. I'm sorry for you this time, church administrator. Oh, no problem, the uncle raised his thumbs up and smiled cheerfully. After all, the church exists so that you people can fight with peace of mind, so the logistics are left to us. Oh, reinforcements, I can't thank you enough. Makoto Takahashi bowed slightly, picked up the shopping basket, and started his magic replenishing purchasing trip. I always feel that if you say something like this to this kid, life will become very happy. The uncle boss looked at Makoto Takahashi choosing items and couldn't help but murmured, although I am always being lectured, but such a life, I actually quite like it. Hee hee. The uncle boss who has nothing to do starts to look through this issue of Young Jump. Prop recycling is complete. If you bought so many things this time, there should be no problem, Makoto Takahashi held a lot of items and put them on the cashier. Looking at the uncle boss who was addicted to comics, his face showed with a happy look on his face. He said, "Administrator, is there any new research recently? What is the effect?" "Well, I found a very interesting skill book. Full Metal Alchemist is very good." The uncle squinted his eyes, pointed at a picture of Edward fighting, and recommended it to Takahashi. "Makoto, Chen, you can also see that if you can master alchemy, it will be much easier to deal with the great devil of the dark world. But don't violate the taboos of alchemy." "Of course I understand this." Makoto Takahashi saw that the comic he drew was liked by his uncle, and the smile on his face became stronger. "It's an exchange of equal value, but it's a great existence." It's true. When the uncle heard what Makoto Takahashi said, he immediately became interested and started talking. "Chen, I really like the comics of Mr. Kumamoto from the Phoenix Academy. Ever since I first saw Destiny Note when I was a child, I felt that the teacher from the Phoenix Institute was very powerful. After the teacher from the Phoenix Institute finished painting Lelich of the Rebellion, there were no new works for a long time. Before that, I was still worried that something had happened, but now that I have seen the new work of Mr. Phoenix Institute, Full Metal Alchemist, I feel that I have worried too much." Equivalent exchange, although it is only a theory mentioned in the comics, is very close to reality. Ah. Oh. The administrator's evaluation is very high. Takahashi Makoto originally planned to leave, but when he heard what the uncle said, he became interested. "Can you tell me more specifically? Maybe with your guidance, come on, maybe I can master the secret. I won't go into the explanations given in the comic." "Chen, go and read it yourself." The uncle pointed at the comic, with a sudden emotion on his face. "Exchange of equal value is limited to alchemists in the comic. But I feel that the law of equivalent exchange applies to everyone everywhere. From birth to death, human beings are all based on the theory of equivalent exchange from beginning to end. Human beings eat in order to survive and consume food to obtain what they need for survival. This is equivalent exchange. Human beings have joy because of emotional matters. Anger, sorrow, and joy, this is also an equivalent exchange. Human beings work hard and get paid, this is also an equivalent exchange." "Uncle, wait a minute," Makoto Takahashi interrupted the uncle calmly. "Some people work hard but don't get corresponding rewards. Is this considered an exchange of equal value?" "Of course, forget it." The uncle looked at Chen Takahashi's disbelieving eyes and laughed heartily. "Chen, do you think that the so-called exchange of equal value means that the effort and the gain must be equal? There is nothing wrong with this idea, but it is a deviation when you understand it." "Deviation? But that's the truth. Some people work long hours every day, but their remuneration is pitiful. Is this considered an exchange of equal value? It's not equal at all, right? That's just the appearance you see." The uncle looked far away and sighed inexplicably. "There are many things in this world that look like this. But the actual situation is that what humans have paid for has been rewarded. It's just a reward for the price. It's because humans are dissatisfied and what they get is different from what they expect, so they feel that giving and receiving are not equivalent and do not qualify as equal exchange. But in Full Metal Alchemist, the Edward brothers paid a huge price to resurrect their mother. In exchange, what did they get?" Makoto Takahashi looked at the uncle seriously, with a flash in his eyes expectation. "My mother did not come back to life, but brother Edward lost something very important. This kind of thing cannot be regarded as an exchange of equal value, right?" "Oh? It seems that you also like Full Metal Alchemist very much, Chen." The uncle's eyes lit up. "This is what I admire the most about the Phoenix Academy teacher. As you said, brother Edward looks like nothing was gained. The elder brother lost his left leg, the younger brother lost his entire body, and the mother was not resurrected, but the meaning the author wanted to express was already very clear. The two Edward brothers used their reckless behavior to gain a child. Information, the dead cannot be resurrected? Maybe you still think that this is not an equal exchange at all, but it is indeed an equal exchange. Just like the sweet and bitter taste of food, you can only know it if you taste it yourself. Makoto Takahashi took over the uncle's words. Perhaps the two brothers in the comic felt that they did not get equivalent existence for the price they paid, but in fact, it's just because what they got is so different from what they expected, that's why they got this result. Yes, that's right, that's it, the uncle's face was full of happiness. After all, anyone who can understand his own thoughts will feel friendly to everyone. So, Uncle has always been secretly in love with the big sister next door. He has paid a lot silently, but the big sister only smiles at you. Makoto Takahashi showed a smile on his face. The price that Uncle has paid, in exchange for what you get, is just the warm smile of the elder sister, because you are already satisfied, so it can be regarded as an exchange of equal value, right? Although I really want to agree with your idea, but... The uncle suddenly reacted, stood up angrily, and rubbed Takahashi Makoto's head fiercely. A kid should think like a kid, these adults, it's not something you should think about right now. But because you like Full Metal Alchemist, I'll give you a 10% discount on today's items. Ah, chatting with the administrator or something, you only get 10% off. Makoto Takahashi took out a piece of paper filled with information from his pocket and handed it to the uncle. Let's exchange it for equal value. This information, you should be able to get a 20% discount, right? 20% off, the uncle took the note and his face suddenly lit up. 30% off is no problem. Cheng, thank you. If you have time in the future, please remember to come often. Is this considered an exchange of equal value? Makoto Takahashi smiled and waved his hand. Hey, uncle, those words you just said are your thoughts on Full Metal Alchemist. In fact, they are exactly the same. This is the reason why I liked this comic in my previous life. Previous life, the uncle was happy, but looked at Makoto Takahashi with some doubts. Does the past life refer to what you told me last time? Well, that's what I told you. When Takahashi Makoto was about to say something else, his phone rang. Oh, you curious little kitten, it seems you have fallen into a trap. Makoto Takahashi looked at the caller ID, a smile appeared on his face. Uncle, I will talk to you in detail when I have time. Now I have to go and have a good time educate a little kitten who likes to steal food. Be gentle when you treat girls, Chen. The uncle showed a smile that all men understand, and gave Takahashi Makoto a thumbs up with a smirk. Haha, this is not possible. A cold light flashed in Takahashi Makoto's eyes. After all, the opponent is a minion of Demon King Ogata. If you want to be whitewashed and become a companion, you have to go through a test. After all, this can be regarded as an exchange of equal value. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao. Chapter 55. Although the time agreed with Makoto Takahashi was in the evening, Yoshida had arrived a lot earlier. When the sky just darkened, Yoshida arrived at the door of Makoto Takahashi's house. Just as he was about to knock on the door, he heard Makoto Takahashi's deep laughter coming from inside. Just like a demon whose seal has been unlocked, that arrogant and wanton laughter seems to be able to penetrate people's hearts. It has been recalled in Yoshida's mind for a long time. Yoshida shook his head hard, trying to drive out the sound, but not only failed, but he heard a girl's voice instead. Is that kid also at this age? Or? Yoshida was a little confused and put his ear to the door, wanting to hear the specific situation. However, they discovered that the door was not locked, but was instead ajar and could be opened with a push. Yoshida swallowed hard and gently pushed the door open. Just a few seconds before he opened the door, Yoshida had imagined countless scenes in his mind, such as Makoto Takahashi doing some activities that were not suitable for children. The moment the door was opened, Yoshida realized that he had been too naive and underestimated Takahashi Makoto. In the room, A girl was hung in the center, her head lowered, her long hair covering her face. And on the table in front of her, there were plates of delicious dishes, and Makoto Takahashi, like the villain in the movie and TV series, sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, a weird smile on his face, and a book in his hand. The black notebook has something written on it. Takahashi Makoto, what are you doing? Yoshida looked shocked. As you can see, I am educating the thief who sneaked into my room, Makoto Takahashi said to Yoshida with a smile, but the smile on his face was a bit creepy. My beloved cat, do you want to join us? Yoshida walked over in secret and wanted to put the bound girl down, but was stopped by Takahashi Makoto. Tusk, 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 my beloved cat, you are still too naive, Makoto Takahashi shook his head with a sneer. If a habitual thief like this cannot leave a deep mark deep in the soul, he will still be so naive in the future. We'll do it again. Brother-in-law Takahashi Makoto, I'm really sorry, the girl spoke, raised her head, and looked at Takahashi Makoto with tearful eyes. Please, can you let me eat something? After eating, I will continue to be tied up. You can also. You, are you Iris? The eldest grandson Iris, Yoshida was surprised this time. He turned to look at Makoto Takahashi with a puzzled look on his face. What's going on? What, do you want to act cute and beg for mercy, a minion of the great demon king Ogata? Makoto Takahashi showed an unscrupulous smile, picked up the vegetables on the table, and walked to Iris. Want to eat? You yourself tell me, how many times has this happened? I won't dare to do it anymore, Changpyu said in a weak tone, and even Yoshida couldn't stand it anymore. Don't you dare, Takahashi Makoto sneered, is this the 7th time you have said such a thing? Icarus, don't think that just because you stole the key from Her Highness the Princess, you can come to my house and eat at will. I arranged it, it's not just that. Are you feeling sick in your stomach now? Well, Iris looked at Makoto Takahashi with a look of grievance. I'm hungry. After taking a powerful laxative, you just feel hungry. Makoto Takahashi looked at the small bottle in his hand with some doubts, then turned to Yoshida and said with a serious face, my beloved cat, as you can see, this woman is not human at all. Yoshida ignored Takahashi Makoto's words and quickly put down Iris. Then I saw Iris, who was pale before, rushing towards Takahashi Makoto. No, to be precise, Iris' target was the plate with food in Takahashi Makoto's hand. In Takahashi Makoto's expression, the shocked Yoshida watched Iris eat all the dishes on the table at an inhuman speed. I'm full, thank you brother-in-law for the hospitality. After eating the food, Icarus was completely revived. Where is the weak look from before? Even though you keep calling me brother-in-law, as a minion of the great demon king Ogata. Makoto Takahashi threatened, next time you come again, I will hang you for an hour. No, maybe I should give it to you. Prepare some whips and candles. Oh? Really? Iris completely lost the previous weakness, but looked at Makoto Takahashi with provocative eyes. You have to know, Sister Rina's place. Alas, when you encounter an unfavorable situation, you use Her Highness as a shield. She is as bad as the great demon king Ogata, Makoto Takahashi sighed, with a cold light in his eyes. If you still want to eat what I cook, just agree to what I said before, otherwise, I'll order takeout every day from now on. Eating takeout is not good for your health, Iris taught Takahashi Makoto very sternly. He rolled his eyes and showed a smile unique to the little devil on his face. Then I will tell Sister Rina that my brother-in-law wants to eat what she has cooked cuisine. Makoto Takahashi turned to look at Yoshida. My beloved cat, drag this witch out and kill her. In the end, under the intimidation of Takahashi Makoto's vision of wanting to seduce someone, Iris left. Yoshida had no choice but to temporarily change his job to become a driver uncle and delivered Calamus to his home. By the time Yoshida returned to Takahashi Makoto's house, it was already 10 o'clock in the evening. Originally, Yoshida planned to go home directly, but Makoto Takahashi wanted Yoshida to come over to discuss the comics. Looking at Makoto Takahashi's solemn look, Yoshida lamented his hard work, but he felt a little confused. So, what are we going to discuss? Yoshida was very curious. It was rare for Takahashi Makoto to take the initiative to discuss comics-related matters. You read the 4th episode first, and then we'll discuss it. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida expectantly. The Troubles of the Alchemist. Yoshida finished the manga manuscript, with a strange expression on his face, and looked at Makoto Takahashi. It can't be that one again. Seeing that Makoto Takahashi didn't reply, Yoshida suspected that he was overthinking and started to look through the manga manuscript. The content of the 4th episode is about the Colonel introducing a Destiny alchemist, Shiu Tucker, to the two Edward brothers 2 years ago. Tucker successfully made a synthetic beast that could understand human speech, becoming an authoritative task in biological body making. In order to find a way to restore their bodies, the two brothers searched for information in Tucker's house. During this time, brother Edward became friendly with Tucker's daughter, Nina. On the other hand, the annual examination of the National Alchemist is coming soon, and Tucker seems very anxious about it. When he saw this, Yoshida suddenly had an ominous premonition and sped up the pages of the manga manuscript. As expected by Yoshida, in order to pass the so-called examination, Tucker actually made his daughter Nina and his white dog Alexander into a synthetic beast. What's going on? When Yoshida saw this, he almost roared and threw the comic manuscript on the table. Obviously the content of the 3rd episode is so inspiring. Why is the content of the 4th episode such darkness? Makoto Takahashi didn't speak, because even back then, when he saw this place, he had a creepy feeling. It was obviously summer, but he felt the indescribable chill behind him. The content of this sentence is no good, absolutely not allowed. Yoshida watched Takahashi Makoto say nothing and sat on the sofa feebly. Takahashi Makoto, the content of your words is too dark. Although Edward was angry and beat Tucker hard, but alchemists are not gods or demons, but real humans. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida and finally explained, I remember it was mentioned in the comics before that the state's alchemists are called the army. My lackeys, do you think that every national alchemist is like the two Edward brothers? Also, darkness exists to set off hope. You don't understand why Edward is angry. Yoshida looked thoughtful and did not answer. After a while, Yoshida picked up the drawing on the table again, suppressed the depression in his heart, and looked at it seriously again. What you want to get, you have to give something. This is the so-called equivalent exchange. Makoto Takahashi borrowed the theme of Full Metal Alchemist and continued to explain to Yoshida, this story of Tucker, it's very heavy and dark, I admit that. But my beloved cat, you. I know what you want to say, Takahashi Makoto. Yoshida's face softened slightly, but his tone was still very rude. But such a story is too cruel, not only for brother Edward, but also for readers. Okay. Can't you just consider the reader's feelings? With deep love comes great responsibility, Makoto Takahashi said calmly. It is precisely because I like it that I feel dissatisfied. Readers are fully expecting perfect works, so no flaws are allowed. Although that's right, but can I stop painting? Of course this won't work. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a serious look on his face and suddenly changed the subject. But, comics, it's best to have more inspiring things. But darkness still exists. Makoto Takahashi awakened his demon attribute. You want to make every reader work hard through a comic? I'm sorry, but I'm not that great. I'm the Demon King, the Destroyer. After the world, the existence that created the world. How could something like this happen to me? But Yoshida wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Makoto Takahashi. The ranking of this chapter will definitely drop, because many people can't accept it. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes, but so what? If because of this, you feel intimidated and scared, you can change the classic at will if you exist, how can you become the Demon King? Yoshida, Jin Daxia was besieged and blocked by readers when he cuckolded Daxia Yang, but he still insisted on writing. Makoto Takahashi showed a hint of admiration in his eyes, I'm not that great. But even so, I will continue to draw, no matter the darkness, no matter the ghosts and animals, I will continue to draw until the end of my life. Because I am, not just a cartoonist. If you don't have any consciousness, how can you become the Demon King? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Email. Chapter 56. After a long conversation with Makoto Takahashi that night, Yoshida was finally convinced and agreed not to modify the content of the fourth episode. But when the new issue of Shonen Jump went on sale, Yoshida suddenly felt regretful. I always feel like that kid calculated it all from the beginning. Yoshida looked a little ugly. Sitting on the office chair, he kept thinking about the previous exchanges. He always felt like he had been deceived. Yoshida, the results of the reader survey are out, the colleague in charge of statistics suddenly shouted, making Yoshida jump up from his chair. Yoshida took the reader survey, closed his eyes, and began to pray in his heart, hoping that the ranking of Full Metal Alchemist would not drop too much. Seeing Yoshida's appearance, many colleagues laughed it off, because the scene often happens in the editorial department, and everyone is not surprised. Yoshida squinted his eyes and saw that the name at the top of the list was indeed not Full Metal Alchemist. Although he had already guessed it, Yoshida still felt a little disappointed after losing the first ranking. He had prayed to hold the first place before, but now it seems that he thought too much. Ah, the number one position has really been given to someone else, Yoshida complained in a sour tone, but his eyes began to look downwards. When he saw Full Metal Alchemist ranked fourth, Yoshida's heart, which had been tense, suddenly dropped. This result is better than I expected. It's just like that kid said. Did I think too much? Huh? Yoshida, do you still have time to think here now? The deputy editor looked at Yoshida, whose expression kept changing, and kindly reminded him, if the cartoonist you are responsible for this year has not come to attend the annual meeting, I guess you might have to dress up as a bunny girl at this year's annual meeting. What? Yoshida suddenly remembered that there seemed to be only more than a week left before the annual meeting. Shonen Jump magazine holds an annual meeting every year, inviting cartoonists who are currently serializing to gather together. This can be regarded as a consolation to the cartoonists who have been working hard to draw. And in order to make the annual meeting more enriching, the editorial department proposed that if the cartoonist in charge does not come, the corresponding editor in charge will be punished accordingly. Generally, there are no special circumstances, and all the cartoonists who are invited will come. However, although Makoto Takahashi has been serializing for 4 years, he has never attended an annual meeting. This also made Yoshida the target of punishment for 4 consecutive years. Takahashi Makoto, teacher Makoto Takahashi, please, you must attend this year's annual meeting. Yoshida clasped his hands together and begged Takahashi Makoto very devoutly, if you don't go, I will dress up as a bunny girl or something. Huh? The annual meeting, not this year. I will be sick during the annual meeting, so I can't go. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with a look of anticipation, and the bunny girl costume, isn't this great? You can satisfy your long-hidden cross-dressing habit. What kind of cross-dressing fetish? Yoshida tried his best to deny it, and suddenly a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Wait a minute, you said before that you couldn't go to the annual meeting this year because of illness. But now you look fine. The evil eye of the demon god has seen that day in the future. On that day, the great demon King Ogata and I had a decisive battle at the Forbidden City. Because the weather was too cold and the great demon King Ogata was unethically late, I fell ill, Takahashi. Chen looked at Yoshida with an idiot look. My beloved cat, idiots don't catch colds. So you are really an idiot. You actually don't believe in the precognition ability of the evil eye of the devil. Believe your sister. Yoshida was so angry that he trembled and pointed at Makoto Takahashi. Takahashi Makoto, you said the same thing last year. Makoto Takahashi turned his head and sighed helplessly. Okay, my beloved cat, I will tell you the truth. When I was very young, my grandfather told me, at that time of year, as long as I am illuminated by the moonlight, I will lose my mind, turn into a gorilla that only knows how to destroy, and then destroy the entire earth. Become a gorilla? Do you think you are a mutancian? Yoshida sneered. I don't care, I will take you there myself when the time comes. Yoshida, are you planning to destroy the earth? Seeing that Yoshida was not intimidated by his words, Takahashi Makoto immediately accused Yoshida of coming. How could there be such a selfish earthling like you? Back then, I worked hard to survive. Earth, are you the one who saved me from Frisia? I'm so sad. I heard that it seems Makino Aoji is going too. Yoshida revealed the news, and as expected, he saw Takahashi Makoto's expression change. Great Demon King Ogata, is that really the extent? Makoto Takahashi complained with some dissatisfaction. I have obviously created so many advantageous conditions for you, but you have delayed it until now. Is that really the great demon King Ogata? You are really incompetent, my beloved cat. For the sake of your sincerity, I will show mercy to you once. I knew you would go. Yoshida finally breathed a sigh of relief and took out the reader survey paper from his bag, looking a little embarrassed. Takahashi Makoto, I'm very sorry, I was still doubting what you said before, but the result proves that you are right. It's okay, don't worry. Makoto Takahashi took the reader survey and looked at it carefully. His face suddenly turned gloomy. Do you think I can forgive you for your mistakes by saying this? I want to be forgiven. Just take practical actions. For example, commit seppuku or something like that. Don't push yourself too far, kid. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi's mocking expression, grabbed the reader survey paper in his hand, and began to accuse loudly. Is the fourth place result worth being proud of? As a devil, you, what about your self-esteem? And you, kid, don't be ungrateful. Do you know that many readers wrote to express their dissatisfaction, but I stopped them a lot. Is that the challenge you mentioned? After listening to Yoshida's words, Takahashi Makoto squinted his eyes and looked at the two handbags Yoshida brought over. Oh. I can feel that dark and boundless resentment. Ah. But is that just this? What do you want to do with the residual image of resentment that you can't even materialize? What I said is only a small part of it, most of it is a letter of support for you. Yoshida sighed. No matter whether a work is good or bad, some people will like it, and naturally some people will hate it, so don't care too much. Wait, what do you want to do? Seeing Takahashi Makoto suddenly stood up without saying a word, dumped a large pile of letters from readers on the table, and began to open them for reading. Yoshida showed a hesitant expression on his face, but he did not make any move. Because Yoshida knows that this is something that a cartoonist must experience. Human experimentation. What the hell is this? Does the author still have any humanity? Resolutely resist this kind of morally corrupt comics. Go to hell, author. I have read all 3 of your comics by Phoenix Academy Fierce. As a price of equal exchange, I can ask you, are you really a human being? Do you still have the so-called human heart? Killing indiscriminately with no regard for life, human lives are being played like chess pieces. If this isn't enough, why don't you start using humans and animals for experiments? Maybe a mental hospital or prison is a good option. Originally, The content of the first 3 episodes of Full Metal Alchemist was quite inspiring. I thought you had changed your past, Phoenix Academy murderous man. But when I read the 4th episode, I felt that you had already changed. It's completely hopeless. They wantonly kill lives and launch wars to massacre civilians. Don't use comics to vent your dissatisfaction and don't insult the profession of cartoonists. Did the editor of the magazine grow up Chi-Siang? Can this kind of comics be approved without review? Is it because Phoenix Academy is fierce and a cartoonist who has been serializing for a long time, so he has special privileges? Who is my dad? Why don't you come kneel and lick me? When Makoto Takahashi looked through the envelopes, there was no expression on his face at first, but as more envelopes were opened, Makoto Takahashi's head lowered, and there was no expression on his face. Yoshida was silent, watching Takahashi Makoto's face getting more and more uncomfortable, and couldn't help but secretly blame himself for being too impatient. Just when he was about to say something, he saw Takahashi Makoto raise his head. His face he showed a weird smile. Tisk, 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 why didn't you bring such an interesting thing to me before? Makoto Takahashi looked up at Yoshida. My familiar cat, what are you worried about? And what's that expression on your face? What's going on? Huh, Yoshida was a little confused this time, because Takahashi Makoto's expression didn't look like he was shocked, but rather he felt like he was enjoying it. Don't you feel depressed, or angry? Huh? My beloved cat, what are you talking about? Makoto Takahashi still kept that smile and raised the envelope in his hand. This gift is very good. I have learned a lot. These things, it can be said to be a very precious gift. Why do you feel depressed and angry? Then why do you emphasize the word gift? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi's evil smile and asked with some horror, that smile is, Makoto Takahashi, what do you want to do? Ah. Now that I have received a gift, I naturally have to prepare a gift in return. I am a very well-educated demon king, Makoto Takahashi said matter-of-factly. Frowning slightly, Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida several times intentionally or unintentionally, and then slowly said, but there are some things that we should discuss with the commander in advance. You were just thinking about how to get revenge, right? You were definitely thinking about this. Yoshida scratched his head with a headache and tried to comfort Takahashi Makoto. In comparison, more readers have expressed support for you, so don't do anything excessive. It's not just you, many authors have encountered this situation, but others didn't do anything and continued to draw comics. My beloved cat, all I see are beings full of resentment. Is this a problem of probability, or is it Tokiomi's fault? Makoto Takahashi shook his head helplessly, and took out 2 letters full of words. Paper, okay, let's not mention this for now. Regarding the comic Full Metal Alchemist that is currently being serialized, I have come up with 2 endings. It was a bit difficult to choose before, but now. Wait. You. Seeing Makoto Takahashi laughing wildly and tearing one of the papers to pieces, Yoshida showed a desperate expression on his face. It's terrible, it's terrible. I still choose this version. Makoto Takahashi looked at the paper with special notes in his hand, and a very happy expression appeared on his face. As for the gift to the readers, I will discuss it with the commander at the annual meeting. Don't make the dark and desperate comics like before. Yoshida began to pray in his heart, but looking at the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face, okay, Yoshida decided to pray to God for 2 hours every day from today. By the way, the title of the Great Devil of Destruction doesn't sound good. Makoto Takahashi ignored Yoshida's confused look, walked to the balcony, and looked at the sky in the distance. In order to implement the real sin and become a terrifying villain, I decided to carry out healing and love to the end. Well, that's it, that's right. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 57. They all use black cars to pick up and drop off. Your organization is quite rich. Makoto Takahashi looked at the cars parked outside and complained unhappily, speaking of which, such a rich organization is really stingy. You can use an all-black car, why not pick up people in a gangda wood? With a drill that can break through the sky, you don't have to worry about traffic jams anymore. Gaudmua? Drill bit. Yoshida gave Takahashi Makoto a strange look, and then grabbed the little sea otter that was trying to sneak away. Here American, it's already reached this point, do you still want to escape? Ms. Yoshida, didn't you say there would be many beautiful women here? The little sea otter looked at Yoshida with confusion. Why don't I see any of them? Everything I look at is a man. Don't worry, a beautiful woman will appear later. Chen has seen her too. Yoshida winked at Makoto Takahashi and motioned for Makoto Takahashi to cooperate. Oh. The King of Black Flame found out. Makoto Takahashi ignored Yoshida's little move and ran towards the strangely dressed new student Eiji. Long time no see, King of Black Flame. Oh, you are finally here, the King of Love and Hate. He opened his arms exaggeratedly, like a bird fluttering its wings to fly. Eiji Nyizuma was as happy as ever. Although it's a little late, it's still I wish you a happy new year. Tisk tisk tisk, King of Black Flame. Makoto Takahashi spread his hands, closed his eyes and shook his head. Now that I have changed my personality, I am no longer the King of Love and Hate. He is the Demon King of Healing Love. Well, even though he is called an enemy, he must be polite. Happy New Year, King of Black Flame. Full Metal Alchemist is very good. It's very exciting. Brove said. Eiji, who looked happy, suddenly curled his lips in boredom, but in terms of points, you seem to be far behind. That's just temporary. Makoto Takahashi did not deny it, but faced his new wife Eiji calmly. But King of Black Flame, do you underestimate me? Real war is not just there are endless strategies to fight in an upright manner. If you can't break through the front for the time being, then let's make a surprise attack. Oh. A surprise attack? I'm curious. I'm looking forward to it. The King of Black Flame's eyes shone with confidence, but I won't lose. Of course, in order to achieve the ultimate goal of love and healing, I, the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, have opened up the theory of the strongest personality. Makoto Takahashi was full of confidence. I will let you know when the time comes that I am the real one. Three Kingdoms Unparalleled. Hey. That one over there seems to be Mr. Ajumu. Eiji, the new wife, didn't pay attention to Takahashi Makoto's words, but looked at the two people behind Takahashi Makoto with blazing eyes. My new wife classmate, and the second grader, a Chang, Landai and Huangmao Glasses Jun were a little surprised, and turned their eyes to the little sea otter. Who is that person? Is there such an editor in the editorial department? Haha, this is Mr. Hiramaru whom I just met. Eiji, the new wife, looked at the silent little sea otter holding a wine glass and introduced him to the two of them. Oh, this is a new toy for my cat and I, Makoto Takahashi introduced with a smile on his face. Toy, Mr. Hiramaru. That is, Mr. Hiramaru who serialized Sea Otter No 11, Landai looked at the little sea otter with a surprised look on his face. The editor Hattori said that the manga talent may be above Cheng and Eiji's genius. Hello, the little sea otter looked at Makoto Takahashi with a blank expression. Can I bring your classmates here? Oh, of course. Not only classmates, but also. Makoto Takahashi grabbed a girl who was eating and drinking. You can also bring pets in. Brother-in-law, let me go. The girl is none other than Icarus. She didn't have the slightest sense of resistance, and stretched out her hands towards the food on the table. Brother-in-law, I will never go to your house to eat secretly again. As expected, Makoto Takahashi said with a gloomy face, the food has become less inexplicably, and the barrier set up cannot prevent your invasion? After all, you are really a human being, not a descendant of Tegzu ancient dragon. Eat, food. Calamus only sees food, and has been completely ignored by the people around him. You go first. Makoto Takahashi suddenly saw a certain figure flash by, with an unknown smile on his face, and let go of the calamus. Forget it, let you eat first. Speaking of the so-called annual meeting, just want to eat, drink, have fun and kill scum. Just when Makoto Takahashi wanted to pass, he was surrounded by people. Seeing Yoshida standing aside with an apologetic smile, Takahashi Makoto first frowned, then glanced at the uncles who were watching him, and a sudden smile appeared on his face. Chen, these people are... Yoshida looked at the smile on Takahashi Makoto's face and immediately realized that his little scheme had been discovered, and he felt a little embarrassed. Yoshida secretly glanced at the disappeared figure at the door, took a long breath, and continued to introduce to Takahashi Makoto, they are... Well, I know, the animation production company. Makoto Takahashi took out his glasses from his jacket pocket and put them on, with a very professional look on his face. You are here to discuss the animation of the manga with me, right? Okay, let's discuss it first. I will talk to you in detail about this matter later, Mr. Yoshida. Seeing Makoto Takahashi say such words with a smile on his face, Yoshida suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, because he had seen Makoto Takahashi in this state before, and that was when he was talking about the contract for the first time. At that time, Yoshida also complained to Takahashi Makoto that if he didn't become a cartoonist, he could become an excellent lawyer. Now Yoshida suddenly felt that his mouth was indeed that of a crow, and it was a bit unsmooth. Do you want the animation copyright of my manga? Makoto Takahashi looked at the big guys around him, with a very professional smile on his face. There is no problem with this, but I think you can handle the related matters. Make the decision. That's no problem. Several big guys immediately nodded and agreed with a smile. They looked at each other. It was fun. You must also know that I did not sell the animation rights before. Makoto Takahashi looked at the big bosses nodding, and the smile on his face became more intense, but unfortunately, currently, those who can be animated, there are only 2 works, that is to say. Is this little fox up for sale? A hint of caution flashed in the eyes of the big guys who were smiling just now. Let's do this, you contact me privately. I can give you my contact information. Makoto Takahashi looked at the expressions of several big guys, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, but he continued, of course, since it's cooperation, and we have to trust each other. Please rest assured that only I know what you are giving me. Then my contact information is. After watching the big bosses leaving with happy or sad faces, Takahashi Makoto frowned in confusion and began to look for Yoshida. What happened just now made Takahashi Makoto have some doubts. Although he now has some guesses, he still has to rely on Yoshida to confirm it. Mr. Yoshida, I have some questions to ask you now. Makoto Takahashi dragged Yoshida to a dark corner and looked at Yoshida seriously. You have the right to choose to refuse to answer, but if you do so, then I will file a lawsuit with the court, saying that you employ child labor and abuse children. I have recorded a lot of videos of you beating me in the past few years, so, you understand? Yoshida was petrified. Sure enough, Makoto Takahashi in this state is his final form, right? What do you want to ask? Question 1. How is the status of cartoonists in this world determined? Makoto Takahashi pushed up his glasses, looked at Yoshida's confused look, and continued to add, compared to existences such as singers and stars, the same they are newcomers, which one has a higher social status. In this world, of course it's a cartoonist. Although he was a little confused by Makoto Takahashi's statement, Yoshida looked proud when he mentioned it. But after noticing Takahashi Makoto's gloomy expression, he immediately continued to explain, don't think that because I am an editor, I am exaggerating the career of a cartoonist. This is indeed the case. Let's put it this way, Rina-chan is very cute and cute. She has the ability. She debuted around the same time as you became a cartoonist, but she can only be regarded as a newcomer. Compared with a cartoonist like you who has been serializing for several years, her popularity is much lower. Question 2. Am I very popular? Makoto Takahashi was a little confused. Why don't I feel this way? The most popular one is Phoenix in Kairuma, not Takahashi. Makoto. Yoshida was a bit dumbfounded. You also saw that the big bosses of the animation company were very friendly to you just now. That's because they know you. It's the Phoenix Academy's fierceness, that's why I treat you like that. Question 3. Compared to that purple-haired bastard, how popular am I? Makoto Takahashi began to understand, but he still needed a yardstick to measure it. How about compared to Teacher Murong? With the name Phoenix Academy fierce, you can already be regarded as a leader of the younger generation in the comics industry. Yoshida also sighed. If you continue to draw for a few years, your fame will probably be as good as yours. Teacher Murong is almost there. Haha, I see. Takahashi. Makoto giggled. My thoughts are stuck in the previous world and are not completely synchronized. I am really extremely ignorant. What's going on? Yoshida watched Takahashi Makoto leave with a silly smile on his face. He followed him quietly with confusion on his face, and heard Takahashi Makoto laughing at himself. What is this? The common people's sense of inferiority is too strong. Makoto Takahashi stood in the corner, holding up the wine glass, and began to pour wine into his mouth. I was just a small employee in my previous life, so for idol stars this kind of existence is considered to be high and out of reach. Even if you change the world and become a popular cartoonist, you still have such thoughts. The world view is already different. A cartoonist, right? But compared to those celebrities, tisk tisk, it's really previous life? Another world. Yoshida looked at the fact that he completely ignored the fact that minors cannot drink. Instead, he covered his forehead and turned away. Has the Chuyunibu started again? The great demon king Ogata said something about not being worthy of Rina. That bastard is simply lying. When Makoto Takahashi fully understood the status of cartoonists in society, he looked completely angry. That mouth demon king who, how dare you deceive me like this? You bastard! You really want to kill me? Wait, that big devil with a bad mouth has noticed this matter early. That bastard, he really knew from the beginning that I didn't know the social status of cartoonists and singers. Takahashi Makoto complained almost with gnashing teeth. He also took the opportunity to beat me, which made me feel guilty and suppressed for a long time. Sister Control is really black-bellied. Lord Lelich is like this, and so is the bastard Ogata. And if I go to that big devil with a bad mouth now, I will probably be laughed at by him. You misunderstood, or you are the one who is wrong. He is just bullying you because you are not well educated and have little knowledge and so on. Takahashi Makoto, who entered a kind of delusion, drank the wine in the glass in one gulp, slammed the quilt on the table, and shouted almost roaring, "Damn it, it's not my fault. Big devil with a bad mouth, it's just my perception of the world that is wrong." The entire annual meeting was stunned, and everyone became silent and only laughed at the cult believers. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 58. Makoto Takahashi didn't care at all about the ridicule from the people around him. Instead, he began to look for the figure that flashed by just now. Humph. He ran away so fast. Is the bastard really just a lost dog? Makoto Takahashi wandered around the venue for several times, but still didn't find the figure of a purple-haired bastard, and he couldn't help but feel a little resentful. In addition, Takahashi Makoto, who had just learned the information about the new world, was extremely depressed. He was sitting alone in the corner, drinking unhappily. "Ah, I found it, I found it." Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto with a happy face. As soon as he got close, he smelled a strong smell of alcohol. Yoshida's face instantly became pale and gloomy. Takahashi Makoto, you actually drank? You know you are a minor. The noise is so annoying, my beloved cat, have you reached that stage yet? Makoto Takahashi turned away helplessly. When you come to my house from now on, please keep your distance from Liuli. I don't want to see it. The child I worked so hard to raise turned into a wife and mother in the blink of an eye. Who would do that kind of thing? Yoshida looked carefully and confirmed that Takahashi Makoto was not wearing glasses. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He took Takahashi Makoto's hand and dragged him in a certain direction. Hurry up, the editor-in-chief is free now, don't you have something to discuss with him? Huh? That was before. Makoto Takahashi's eyes were a little dull, and he began to enter the memory mode. A long time ago, there was a small mountain village, and there lived a handsome boy. His name was Makoto Takahashi. Ah, the young man Takahashi Makoto is so handsome, and his facial features are so charming. Stop saying these incomprehensible words. Yoshida brought Takahashi Makoto in front of the editor-in-chief. You stay here until the end of the annual meeting. I heard that you have something to ask me, Makoto Takahashi. The editor-in-chief showed a rare smile because today is the annual meeting. What is it specifically? Yeah, it seems it's inevitable. Makoto Takahashi sighed, put on his glasses, and entered Dynasty Warriors hero mode. Commander, can I talk to you about the banquet? Banquet? The editor-in-chief looked around curiously. Are you dissatisfied with today's banquet? It's a feast for the future king. Makoto Takahashi looked at the editor-in-chief speechlessly, and kindly reminded him, Commander, don't you think there are too few people participating now? Especially female cartoonists, there are no say it to those who join in. Isn't there an eldest grandson Iris? The editor looked at Iris who was still eating and drinking, and said calmly, besides, there are very few female cartoonists in juvenile comics, which is a normal thing. The intestines can adapt to strong laxatives, eat dark dishes as snacks, and can continue to eat for more than 2 hours at a banquet. Rather than being a woman, we should think carefully about whether her body is human. Gao Qiaocheng watched Icarus eating the cake happily, his stomach twitching a little, and he tried to continue the topic to distract himself. Don't you think that if you want to hold a lively banquet, you need many participants? Do you have any new ideas? A glimmer of light flashed in the commander's eyes. Let's talk about it in detail. After all, many cartoonists found the feast you proposed before to be very interesting. Commander, we can actually organize a love-themed event. Makoto Takahashi showed a smile on his face. Although the theme of love does not sound in line with the theme of Shonen Jump, for most female readers it is said that it is an existence that cannot be ignored. Many hot-blooded king comics do not have many female readers, so you can see if you can. This proposal sounds very good, but the specific situation still needs to be discussed by the board of directors. After the editor paused for a moment, he gently patted Takahashi Makoto on the shoulder. These matters will be left to us adults. Let's deal with it. Takahashi Makoto, just enjoy the banquet today. The discussion of the board of directors, it's really a pure politician's prevarication. Makoto Takahashi looked at the editor-in-chief who turned to leave. He was a little dissatisfied with the result. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Speaking of which, this state is really the consumption is huge. About 70% of the body's energy is consumed. It seems that you must not overdo it when using it in the future. Then the next thing to do is. Takahashi Makoto put his glasses into his jacket pocket. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Yoshi, the target has been found. Phoenix Institute Makoto visually confirmed the target location. The mad energy particles are scattered. The target, purple-haired bastard scum, is confirmed. The first weapons system is confirmed. The third backup weapons depot is confirmed. The first phase is started. Mikaya Anji was tasting red wine alone, but his eyes showed contempt and disdain for the people around him. Originally, The people invited to attend this annual meeting were all cartoonists who were serializing or were about to be serialized. Makino Aoji was not qualified to come, but another magazine that also belonged to Yuisha tried his best to invite Makino Onji. This magazine has always been ambitious and wants to overthrow the dominance of Shounen Jump, and it has poached many corners over the years. They had contacted Makoto Takahashi before, but Makoto Takahashi commented, "It's a good idea for ants to shake up the tree, but don't be so arrogant that you want to go against heaven." After that, the two sides got a little unhappy. At this annual meeting, the editor-in-chief of this magazine shamelessly wanted to bring his cartoonists to attend. However, many mangakas who were originally serialized in Shounen Jump rejected it without any hesitation. Even a certain Aotian must consider such a slap in the face, relying on the protagonist's halo to do it. As for the existence of supporting roles, don't expect it at all. And Makino Aoji, who had no self-awareness at all, held up the wine glass and looked like he was mocking the monster with all his strength. Takahashi Makoto naturally noticed it. "Hey, purple-haired bastard, how dare you, a scumbag like you, come here." Although Takahashi Makoto is not Clark, all he needs to do to disguise himself is to wear clothes, but a simple disguise can still be done. "Come with me." This voice is. Makino Onji listened to Takahashi Makoto's voice, a hint of gloom flashed on his face, and then he smiled. "It's true, it turns out to be the famous Zero teacher. Your music is very good. I don't want to repeat what I said before, bastard." Makoto Takahashi put on a white mask on his face. "By the way, your smile is really hypocritical. But it's no wonder, scum will be scum after all. Teacher Zero, what you are doing may be a little inappropriate." Makino Aoji followed Takahashi Makoto to the outside of the venue. In a dark corner, the smile on his face gradually disappeared, and instead he showed arrogance. The look on his face said, "Maybe you don't understand, but I have won many awards, including the championship of the National Kendo Conference. So is it really okay to have such a private conversation?" "Kendo," a surprised voice came from under Makoto Takahashi's mask, but his tone was full of disdain. "Are you another idiot learning Kendo? Or the champion, do you think that after learning Kendo for a few days? Is he the Condor hero? Or that junior sister's senior brother? This world is really hopeless." "Humph. Don't think I don't know what you mean, the guy named Zero." A disdainful expression appeared on Makino Onji's face. As for the people Takahashi Makoto was talking about, he didn't know, and he didn't want to know. "Are you unhappy because you saw me taking advantage of Rina? But so what? Comics are not just about drawing pictures, you also have to learn to hype and create topics. Only by increasing exposure can you attract people's attention. Gather more popularity." "Then I'm really sorry," Makoto Takahashi bowed slightly. "It's really my fault for calling you a scumbag. If a bastard like you is called a scumbag, I'm really sorry for the word scumbag." "Aren't you the same?" Makino Onji looked at Makoto Takahashi with a sneer. "Aren't you the same one who used Rina at the school festival to gain popularity for your comics? You have the right to call me that, a scumbag. Alas, I can communicate normally with Sadaharu, but I can't communicate with you." Makoto Takahashi spread his hands helplessly. "As expected, aren't we living in the same world? So, are you enlightened?" "Enlightenment? What awakening?" Makayanji watched Takahashi Makoto randomly pick up a wooden stick from the ground. A playful smile appeared on his face. "I see, after becoming angry, he still chose the barbarian. How to do it? Barbarian? Sorry, when I was playing with the big pineapple, my favorite was the necromancer." Makoto Takahashi watched the other party pull out the dagger from his waist, with some surprise on his face. Yo, no, to think that a well-known artist still carries such a weapon with him. "By the way, are you studying Kendo? Why do you use a dagger?" And your dagger looks very ordinary, I guess it's a blue weapon at most. Is it called the dagger of quality or, I really can't help but complain. It would be a pity if you didn't play philosophy with this talent. I'm sorry to say. Humph. This dagger was from when I was surviving in the Amazon wilderness. The purple-haired bastard inexplicably entered the memory-killing mode and began to ramble on about his bravery back then. You're such a verbose bastard, you're really annoying. Makoto Takahashi half-crouched, put the stick on his waist, made a sword-drawing gesture, and took a deep breath. Secret skill, Phoenix in Seiryu the First style, the true sword-drawing Dark Phantom surprise attack. After Makoto Takahashi traveled to this world, his physical fitness was a bit too strong. Although he was not able to jump 3 meters at a time, according to Makoto Takahashi's explanation, he was definitely not a scumbag with a combat power of only 5. At least it's not too difficult to deal with a national champion or something like that. I will not describe the details of the battle. There is no bloody plot such as fierce bombardment, and then a big move to counter-attack when dying. Makoto Takahashi just struck with one blow, relying on the monster-like power to kill the wild man in the world. Anji was whipped away. Stand up, you bastard. Makoto Takahashi looked at Makino Anji lying on the ground, feeling like he hadn't beaten enough yet. Makoto Takahashi walked over, grabbed Makino Aoji by his collar, and lifted him up. The expression under the mask was filled with anger. You wantonly trample on the princess's feelings and make her highness cry sadly, you this bastard. What, you actually fainted? Makoto Takahashi looked at Makinoji who was lying limply on the ground, and mocked disdainfully, for such a bastard, he dared to peep at the coveted princess. He really overestimates his capabilities. But fighting is still a bad behavior, especially with this bastard's character. He will definitely take the opportunity to hype it up, so, the anger on Takahashi Makoto's face began to fade, and he was replaced by a devilish smile. Well, this is a kind gift from this demon king, bastard, remember the gratitude in the depths of your soul, ha 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 ha. Takahashi Makoto dragged Makino Koji away from the annual meeting with wild laughter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 59. Searched can on Google. This offer of yours is very tempting, but I still refuse. Makoto Takahashi rubbed his head with a headache and pushed up the glasses on his face. I feel relieved to hand over the animation to your company. But you actually want me to dub Lelich? What a cruel idea. You are thinking too much. I am just a cartoonist, not a voice actor. And now, I am preparing to become the king of Black Flame. To launch a surprise attack. Are you making such a request at this time to deceive your teammates? Makoto Takahashi hung up the phone with some displeasure, looked at the reader survey paper on the table, and began to calculate the current points gap in his mind. The king of Black Flame is currently ranked first in points, and is far away from the second-placed Makoto Takahashi. As for the third-placed Icarus, it seems that the points have increased very quickly recently. For the second place the rankings have been watched with eager eyes. Since the points of other people have not exceeded 1,000, for the top 3, they are now completely scum with a combat power of only 5. It won't work if this continues, Makoto Takahashi frowned. The planned scene of everyone fighting against each other did not appear, but instead the scene of the 3 kingdoms was formed. If this continues, the banquet will be really boring. Takahashi Makoto, it's up to you to do this. Yoshida suddenly rushed in from the door with a newspaper in hand, attacking Takahashi Makoto continuously. Just now, Kino Aoji suddenly said at the press conference, you announced that you were going to enter the philosophy show and completely change your career. What did you do at the annual meeting that day? This, I just let that bastard know himself clearly and pointed out the way forward for him. This is just a gift from the Demon King. Makoto Takahashi glanced at the newspaper with some disdain and said depressedly, because of this purple-haired bastard, and the slime elite known as the Great Demon King Ogata, I had to be distracted some time ago and engage in a multi-front war. Instead, I neglected my biggest opponent. The King of Black Flames. The gap has actually begun to widen, the timing is so good. I really underestimated your existence at the beginning. If that's the case, you don't have to worry. After all, the ranking of your Full Metal Alchemist has begun to stabilize, Yoshida comforted him kindly, and your previous 2 comics have only now begun to enter animation. The stage of transformation. When the animation starts to be broadcast, it will drive the sales of the comic book. In this way, there is still a chance to surpass the points. That's true. Makoto Takahashi still curled his lips, but I still feel very uncomfortable. You know, I maintained the leading position at the beginning, and now I have fallen to 2nd place. If I'm not careful, my ranking will continue to drop. Is it really all the fault of the purple-haired bastard and Ogata slime? That's right, it's them who made me fall behind. Don't blame your own mistakes on others casually. After Yoshida complained, he began to apply auxiliary skills to Takahashi Makoto. I have already contacted the assistant who will replace Miss Shang Guanyu, and he will be there tomorrow. My familiar cat, regarding assistants. Makoto Takahashi pondered for a moment, then a trace of determination appeared on his face. Can you find more assistants? I want to start a new serial. I refuse this kind of thing. Yoshida refused without hesitation, and his face became very ugly. Takahashi Makoto, Phoenix Academy teacher. Do you think drawing comics is child's play? Many cartoonists serialize a work alone, it's already very difficult. But you actually want to try to start a new series. I can understand your eagerness to catch up with Nyizuma Eiji, but is this really okay? Are you worried that I won't be able to complete the drawing in time? Makoto Takahashi shook his head disdainfully. My familiar cat, you are so sweet. If it were before, maybe I wouldn't be able to do it, but I have seen after learning the truth, I mastered the secret technique. Yes, your drawing speed has improved a lot in the past few years. Yoshida's perfunctory tone made Takahashi Makoto very angry. When he was about to say something, he saw Yoshida's gloomy face. But Makoto Takahashi, what about plot construction if 2 comics are serialized at the same time? Can you think about the plots of 2 comics at the same time? And if 2 comics are being published at the same time, can you ensure that the plot will not become confusing? I can guarantee this. Makoto Takahashi pointed to his brain. This place has a golden finger called. Is it that search engine again? Yoshida suddenly sat down on the sofa helplessly. Looking at Makoto Takahashi's determined look, he sighed helplessly. Well, then what have you decided on? All right. Let's talk about it first. It's very difficult to convince others to serialize your new comics at the serialization meeting, even if you are a popular cartoonist. As long as the comics are interesting, they can be serialized as long as they are interesting. Makoto Takahashi used the taunting skill on Yoshida. My familiar cat, Commander Sama's courage is not something that someone like you can easily grasp. So, if you still have delusions about the position of editor-in-chief, you are still far away. Humph. That's easy to say, but... Yoshida's face became very serious and he made suggestions to Takahashi Makoto. What is the new comic? Have you decided what subject matter you want to draw? In the past few years most of the works you serialize are realistic science fiction, so as the editor in charge, I still recommend that you continue to draw works in this style. You know, many cartoonists used to start new comics because of the subject matter. The steering is too sudden, and the final result is. My beloved cat, don't try to use your inferior human wisdom to guess what the Demon King is thinking. Makoto Takahashi smiled lightly. but his tone was full of regret. It's a pity, if you give me if there are 100 Misaka sisters, let alone 2 comics being serialized at the same time, there is no problem in serializing 100 comics at the same time. Hey? You said, 100, Yoshida didn't believe this exaggerated lie that could be exposed at a glance. Instead, he looked at Makoto Takahashi seriously. Do you really want to serialize 2 volumes at the same time? Comics. Although I don't agree with it, since it is your strong request, Chen, I will seriously consider it. But I have to discuss this matter with the editor. Eh? Do you still want to ask the commander? Makoto Takahashi scratched his head helplessly and began to say with a serious face, a surprise attack is about using devious tactics. The most important thing is speed. If you want to pursue the Black Flame, King, you can't keep dragging your feet like this. Besides, if you ask the commander for instructions, there is a 80% chance that you will be rejected. I can do this, King of Black Flame, by serializing 2 comics at the same time. It can definitely be done. So at this time, we can only kill first and then play. By the way, can I ask you a question, Chen? Yoshida held the new issue of the comic manuscript. He was not eager to read it as usual, but looked at Makoto Takahashi curiously. It's probably not my imagination, why since the annual meeting, it feels like you have started to become, well, it's hard to describe, well, by the way, it feels like you have started to become more active. Oh, that's a good question. Makoto Takahashi suddenly stood up. That's because the King of Black Flame ignited my sealed hot-blooded soul. Going back in time, it seems to be the 3rd day after the annual meeting. Hey, King of Black Flame, why are you summoning us? Takahashi Makoto practiced wrestling on the ground with his quilt in his arms and rolled around the room. Sadaharu and Ruri next to him also imitated Takahashi Makoto, forming a circle and play the game of roll around. Wow, Mr. Phoenix's new comic is so exciting. Eiji's unique voice on the phone made Takahashi Makoto a little confused. I'm so touched. I can't draw such a comic. I will accept this compliment. Makoto Takahashi stopped practicing and looked confused. Have you not said these things before at the annual meeting? The purpose of the King's call specifically, yes. Well, looking at your points, Mr. Phoenix Academy, you are already lagging behind a lot, so I called the teacher to ask you. Eiji Shinzuma over there did not care about other people's feelings at all, and said directly, the strategy of surprise attack is what? Surprise attack. After Takahashi Makoto was silent for a moment on the phone, he began to think about how to answer his new wife Eiji. I like drawing comics very much, because drawing comics is a very happy thing. Eiji Nizuma suddenly started talking to himself, but I can feel that in the comics of Mr. Phoenix Institute, there is no such happiness, but a sense of joy. Depressed and confused. Sometimes, I can feel that many of the drawings and content of Mr. Phoenix Academy's comics are not created by the same person. Mind reading? No, 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 this is no longer the level that mind reading can achieve. Makoto Takahashi was shocked. Is this the legendary Sharingan that can see through all illusions? He is worthy of being the King of Black Flame. It's just that I'm overthinking it. Eiji Shinzuma sounded a little frustrated over there. I was pleasantly surprised by Phoenix Sensei's debut work back then. Although the current Full Metal Alchemist is equally exciting, say it, but it always feels a little inconsistent. Ahahaha, now that you have discovered it, I will no longer hide it. Makoto Takahashi suddenly laughed. Yes, I am the Demon King who has mastered the truth. I am currently incarnated as a human being and am living in the world. Wandering, wanting to learn how to be a real human being. Phoenix Academy teacher, you are still in the same state as before. Someone who can communicate with Takahashi Makoto normally has appeared. But this kind of communication seems to be more about talking to oneself, right? Teacher of the Phoenix Academy, no, he is the Demon King of healing and love. The king's feast that I mentioned before was very exciting and exciting. I feel my blood boiling. When I achieve the final victory, I will challenge those cartoonists. Those cartoonists. Makoto Takahashi was stunned at first, then a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Are you going to challenge those beings who have been canonized as gods? Of course, Eiji, the new wife over there, said with some doubts in his tone. Huh? Isn't this the purpose of holding this feast, teacher? Well said. Well said. Well said, Makoto Takahashi excitedly cheered repeatedly. Such an idea is worthy of being said by the king of Black Flame. But before that, let us decide the outcome first. Let's start a war in a place where the gods cannot predict. No matter we win or lose, we will have the qualifications to challenge the gods. Oh, that's it, that's it? My crow will not lose, even if the opponent is Full Metal Alchemist. Is that true? Then let me show you the surprise attack of the Demon Lord. Takahashi Makoto's eyes were ablaze with fighting spirit. To thank you for your reminder, I will make an exception and tell you the details. The so-called surprise attack is, reinforcements falling from the sky. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 60. Taiwan Novel Network. Rightward arrow. Yoshida looked very unhappy because this was the third time he came to Takahashi Makoto's home this week. Wahahahaha. The moment Yoshida entered the door, Makoto Takahashi laughed wildly. My round drawing card has entered the preparation process. This is already my second round of activating the magic card Future Fusion. After previously sending the fusion materials school days, when the chilling cry and may this moment be forever to the graveyard, darkness, blackness, hatchet girl. Scumbag, scumbag, bulldozer. Ah, in my field, I specially summoned Hanshin Campus, forever. Yoshida saw the whole room suddenly enveloped in darkness, and there was a smell of blood in the air. A girl in darkness, holding a hatchet, laughing ferociously, rushed toward Yoshida. The scene turned, and there was a ship next to Yoshida. The boat passed by slowly, with a girl lying on it, holding a round object in her arms. The girl smiled softly. Although he could not hear clearly what he was saying, Yoshida felt a chill. The picture suddenly appeared again. Change, a woman was drunk, and the three men around her showed malicious smiles, supporting the woman and walking slowly towards a hotel. This is... Yoshida rubbed his eyes hard. The scenes that just appeared did not appear at all. Only Makoto Takahashi was holding a thick stack of drawings, standing in the center like a demon that had just awakened, laughing softly. Yoshida was a little confused. Could everything that just happened be my hallucination? An illusion? Hee. Makoto Takahashi chuckled in a low voice. This is the inherent barrier of the Demon King of healing love, healing love. My beloved cat, have you heard the screams of hell? Have you finished the drawing? The new serial you plan to start? Yoshida suddenly felt a chill, and his voice unconsciously amplified a lot, but the twitching corners of his mouth and the trembling voice made Yoshida look a bit fierce. This is my new comic. Makoto Takahashi suddenly showed a hearty smile, and this is also the best gift to the readers who wrote in before. This is... As soon as Yoshida reached out to take the manga manuscript, he felt that the manga manuscript seemed to have turned into a man-eating beast, roaring ferociously at him. Yoshida shook his head in confusion, with a confused look on his face. This is just a manga manuscript. Why do you see monsters? Maybe you didn't sleep last night. My beloved cat, sometimes your intuition is very accurate. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with a look of regret. This is why I chose you. But now it seems that I made a mistake. The choice. Before reading the manga manuscript, Takahashi Makoto, can you explain to me why when you came here yesterday, you said you didn't draw it well, but there are so many manga manuscripts today? Yoshida held onto the manga manuscript tightly. Since you have drawn so many, Why didn't you give them to me when you came yesterday? Idiot familiar cat, do you know the effect of future fusion? From your own deck, send the material monster determined by the fusion monster card to the graveyard, select a fusion monster from the fusion deck, and after this card is activated, during the second preparation process, the selected fusion monster was specially summoned on his field. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with disdain. You don't even understand the rules of the card, are you really a duelist? I don't know about duelists. I'm sorry, I'm just an editor, Yoshida shouted loudly, as if to dispel some uneasiness in his heart. By the way, there should be nothing wrong with your work. Right? If something like this happens. Humph. This is a sincere work of healing from the Demon King. Makoto Takahashi looked at the manga manuscript in Yoshida's hand, a look of anticipation flashed in his eyes. I hope the readers will like this gift from the Demon King. Only by implementing love and only by healing can I become the Demon King of the New World. Hanging Campus, forever? Chen, your name-making ability is still as good as ever. Yoshida didn't even bother to complain about the name, but at least it seems to have improved, and it's better than Music Lovers and Nana It's a Lot. Humph, if you don't like it, I can change the name, such as Lee Gowden, and Lee Gowden or something like that. Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure. Let me tell you in advance, this is a fantasy comic. If you think of it as a normal campus animation, then I can only express your intelligence that the little sea otter has another toy. Fantasy comics? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with some confusion, secretly taking photos of girls on the train. Is this a fantasy comic? It feels surprisingly ordinary. Tisk tisk tisk, my beloved cat, you have never been involved in the universe, how do you know the existence of parallel worlds? Makoto Takahashi raised his index finger and shook it gently. You got up in the morning and went to work, and you got there on the train on time. Company, then work hard until get off work, take the train back home, and the day is over. However, the other Yoshida in parallel was distracted by looking at the beautiful woman on the road, and did not catch the train, and then was late. You were fired by the commander. When you returned home, you were possessed by the universe and made you choose to end your life. In this parallel world, there is only one dead person named Yoshida. What do you want to say? Yoshida's eyes were full of confusion, but his face was a little ugly. It's just unemployment, why would I choose death? So, this is the will of the universe. Takahashi Makoto shook his head helplessly, the wisdom of fools. Simply put, it's like you flip a coin, is it heads or tails? Maybe you in this world get heads, but you in another world get tails. This is the greatness of the existence of parallel worlds. I understand a little, but does this have anything to do with your comics? Yoshida looked puzzled. Speaking of these theories, can they really be described clearly through comics? Humph. My beloved cat, you really disappoint me. Takahashi Makoto was a little angry. If even the parallel world cannot be understood, what should my king who is expected by everyone do? If this world does not witness the birth of my king, then simply destroy it completely. You seem to have many reasons to destroy the world recently. Yoshida began to look through the comics. Okay, in order to prevent this world from being destroyed by you, I will read the comics carefully and study your so-called parallel world theory carefully. Is that okay? Oh, my cat, are you finally able to understand the good intentions of the Demon King? Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida with a look of relief. You can already see the phantoms of resentment and blackened entities. You have really grown a lot. I am very relieved. Well, is this a dual protagonist mode? Yoshida sighed helplessly. Ito Makoto and Narumi Takayuki, but there seem to be a lot of girls this time. But if so many characters appear, it looks a bit messy. Higurashi School, Eternity. Although Takahashi Makoto has integrated 3 stories, he has actually only made some subtle adjustments. The stories of Ito Makoto and Narumi Takayuki are the side stories, and Higurashi when they cry is the main line of the development of things. The three stories have not changed much, except that Makoto Takahashi used the different endings of Higurashi when they cry to release the multiple endings of School Days and May This Moment Forever. By the way, Makoto Takahashi hesitated again and again about some descriptions of certain aspects, but still did not fully portray them. The first painting was a family portrait. The male and female protagonists who appeared in the three works all appeared in the painting. The reason why Yoshida said it looked a bit messy was because there were too many characters. At the beginning of the story, Makoto Takahashi introduced the three stories separately. Makoto Ito, Takayuki Narumi, and Kiyaki Maeda were neighbors before. When the story happened, Makoto Ito had just entered high school, Takayuki Narumi had just been in the third grade of junior high school, and Kiyaki Maeda transferred back to his hometown Hinamizawa. The ending of The Good Ship in the school chapter, Yoshida looked at the subtitle with a puzzled look on his face. What is the ending of The Good Ship? Oh, that, it's the ending of a certain world, about Makoto, ahem, about Ito Makoto. Takahashi Makoto's face was a little unnatural. Look, my beloved cat, isn't this comic full of positive energy? It feels a bit boring, Yoshida complained a little dissatisfied. The content of this comic is very ordinary. In many works of Shonen Jump, the protagonists are extremely individual, and each protagonist has his own characteristics, but in your comic, Ito Makoto and Narumi Takayuki are just normal people. And by the way, is Maeda Kiyaki also the male protagonist? Transferring back to his hometown, and then writing something in a panic, although this is a bit suspenseful, but if it is the protagonist, such a low appearance rate is really rare? Wait, what are you talking about? Takahashi Makoto listened with some confusion, then looked at the draft in Yoshida's hand, and suddenly roared with some dissatisfaction, my cat, I really want to take out your brain and clean it. You are looking in the wrong order. The correct order should be like this. My cat, I thought you had evolved before, but I didn't expect that you are just a one-star ordinary bone monster after all, Takahashi Makoto complained to Yoshida while sorting out the draft. See, this is the correct way to watch it. Yoshida looked at the uneven comics in his hand and wanted to say something, but looking at Takahashi Makoto's expectant look, he couldn't say anything, so he had to start reading the comics. And the flash of evil smile in Takahashi Makoto's eyes was not seen by Yoshida. Well, the plot is well designed. It makes people feel somewhat clear, but also more confused. Yoshida exhaled a long breath. Is it true that the way I watched it before was incorrect? Although the beginning of this work looks beautiful, the close-ups of the characters' faces slowly create a suspenseful atmosphere. Maeda Kiyaki's actions make it feel like something is going to happen later. So your previous worries were unnecessary. Such a harmonious and loving opening is not only to welcome my king, but also to convey my idea of healing and love to every reader. Takahashi Makoto began to curl up his lips and started to laugh wildly. Look forward to the arrival of harmonious and loving works. He ha 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 ha.